Everything is personal right here. Everything is personal right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Everything is Personal. And today, our guest is Zahra Adloo. I got the name right.
Yeah,
Yes?
it's perfect. Good job. I would think you actually spoke Farsi with how well you pronounced it.
My girlfriend's Persian, so I have a little bit of
Oh,
that
there
sound
you
in there.
go. Okay, I
Yeah,
wasn't
so
off then.
yeah, you're on, you're on. I think I'm an immigrant, right? So once you speak a different language and you have that in your ear, it's much easier to start, connecting to other
Right.
languages and dialects as well.
I
So
agree. If I were to guess, you're from like the Baltic region.
yeah,
Yeah.
damn, that's a good guess. Yeah, I was born in Lithuania in Vilnius.
Lithuania.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been here since I was like 6, so pretty much grew up in it.
Awesome. Do you speak it at all?
I speak some Russian because you
Russian,
weren't
right.
because when I was a kid, I was part of the Soviet Union, so
Okay.
you're not allowed to speak your own whatever country's
Oh,
language. You have
wow,
to
wow.
everybody has to go to Soviet schools and all. I didn't go to school because I was a kid, but
Right.
you have to speak everybody speaks Russian. So
Nice. Awesome.
so this is going to be a really easy question for you. So
Okay,
it's a softball coming up. How
let's do
does
it.
someone find their purpose?
All right, so that takes a long time, honestly. I think it takes the awareness that you actually want to go towards that realm and to actually define what that is for yourself. And I think no matter what direction you take in your life, you always get rerouted to your purpose. And I'll give you an example of how I came across that for myself. From the beginning, always had a great introspection about, my emotions and the feelings of others. I'm very empathetic. And, for a while, when I was in high school, I'm like, I want to be a psychologist. And I was like talked out of it. I was told, well, no, you shouldn't do this. You should go on and do something else. And so I did because I didn't really have a sense of autonomy at that time. But what I found is that, like, no matter what career path I went on and no matter what degree I earned, I always ended up still being that therapist, even if I wasn't educated on it. And so again, I would like get pulled back to being this healer, no matter what direction I took. And I think that when that happens, you have to listen to that inner voice and actually pay attention to your strengths and acknowledge them and see where they lead you. So for me, it took a long quest, and that comes from my upbringing, wanting to people please, wanting to do what was expected of me because I had immigrant parents. But all in all, I think I, from the beginning, knew that I, was a healer and that I was good at giving therapy and being like a really good active listener to begin with. And so I think going back to your purpose has to do with you sitting with yourself and letting your inner compass guide you and not letting anyone deter that path from you.
I mean, it's a lot in common. My parents brought in a psychiatrist to talk me out of going into music because I want to, even though I'm not a musician, I wanted, but I learned that this guy Rick Rubin doesn't play any instruments, but he's involved in music and the music that I really liked at that time. So I'm like, I want to do that. I'm not sure what he does, but I want to do that. So they talked me out of it. I went to physical
Yeah.
therapy school
See?
and went all the way around. I'm still not in music, but I did do something in music. But I'm still I tried so many different things in my life to get me to
Right.
that purpose. And it's still something similar to what you said. There is still this healing nature in me. I want to help people.
Yeah.
Music may be a part of it. I don't know, but it's something that connects to what I do now. But when you're going through this journey, like, there's financial pressures and all that stuff. Okay, I want to be in music, or I want to help people, or I want to be, something to do with coaching or whatever it is. But I have responsibilities, I have bills to pay, and these are the things that people say to me all the time. Well, great, okay, you pursue your passion, why you want to do that, but you still have to live a life. So
Right.
what do you do? What do you tell
So
people that have that?
So I will say I actually did that myself. I got my first master's in management information systems. I went into IT because, they had a lot of job opportunities where you would get six figures. So I secured my primary needs, and a lot of people fall back on that. They need to find a safety net before they can pursue their creative, end of years, if you would say. But I think overall, if you start out doing what you love, eventually, because you love it, you will be so successful in it to where your primary needs will be met. Now, sometimes you have to take steps, and yes, you need to work odd jobs, and you need to work another career to be able to strengthen that what you want to do and build upon that until you get to a place. I mean, even people who are entrepreneurs, they'll start off working for corporate for a while, and they'll continue to work on the side until their business picks up, and then they can quit and continue to go on that path and be successful more than ever. But I think overall, most people have that panic because it's your primary need. You need to stabilize yourself. You need to be in a place where you feel grounded. You need to be able to take care of your housing, your bills, all of that. And so, yeah, sometimes it will deter you from your path temporarily, but always I find that you go back to that path. And if anything, with more skill sets than you had before.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. It sounds like my journey as well. Working for other people, I was just always thinking myself, we're making all this money, we're doing, but I'm doing it for somebody else.
Right,
So
right.
I always, I always had this itch since I was like 14 years old to have my own stuff. And
And I think, to be honest with you, we're put in that system. I think
yeah,
that, like, yeah, we're put in the system. We go to school, we're given that, and it's been going on for years, right? Now we're finally starting to wake up, and now we have like influencers doing it on their own and like making a ton off of like one Instagram post, but for a while there's a system. We go to school, and then you incur all this debt, you're stuck in paying that, and then you have your life on the side too, right? So you're kind of stuck in this system. Whereas now I think people are starting to realize that, you can create your own path, and it doesn't have to be based on what we've seen as a societal norm throughout the generations that have existed before us, right? So
yeah.
my thing is just like, go with what you feel you want to do, and try to find the way to do it without putting yourself in debt. And hopefully you've already made it more than others have.
Yeah, it's my daughter always tells me, it's like, Dad, you work too hard. There's other ways to do this. I'm
Right,
like, I
right.
don't know of any other way. I have no idea. I'm not of your generation that, as you said, that does a TikTok
Yeah.
or something like that and becomes an influencer. So hopefully the next generation doesn't have to follow that
And I
linear path.
actually think they got lucky. To be honest with you, I think they got lucky. These like teenagers, right? They don't really have that responsibility. They can't even work, so they're still under, the parental provisions of their parents. And so they start making these like videos, and then sometimes it just skyrockets, and then that's where they end up, right? So maybe they didn't have the thought of that this could be super successful and it might be my career. Maybe it just was handed to them because we didn't have those things in our, generation
Yeah.
or during the time when we were teenagers. So sometimes I think it just has to do with what time you were born and what was given to you. There's that book, The Outliers, that talks about that.
Yeah,
So
Malcolm Gladwell.
yeah,
It's one of my
yeah,
favorites. But you know, it's something to be said about luck and being born in a certain in a certain time frame. But you have to be prepared to take advantage of the door, even if it's a little bit open. You can get lucky, and there's a lot of kids these days. They had a post, they go viral. Okay,
Mhm.
great, I got a viral post, but they don't take specific action to amplify that or to
Right.
leverage that for something else.
Yeah.
And that's where I think that's where like sort of the entrepreneurial mindset steps in,
Right.
and you're able to kind of use that for for different things that you can benefit from.
I think that has to do with like perseverance, motive, and just being action oriented and growth minded, just like in that book. I think it's called Growth Mindset or Mindset.
Yeah.
That was a really good book about fixed mindset and growth mindset. And I think that, like, yeah, with whatever you want to do, you're always going to want to leverage yourself and want to level up eventually if
Yeah.
that's what you love what you're doing, if you love what you're doing. And so there are moments where we feel like we're stuck in these habits that take us like, that don't take us to where we want to see ourselves. I think this is where psychedelics come in, right? Like I talk a lot about psychedelics, and it basically, it encourages neuroplasticity. And that is really like new neural networks communicating with each other, helping us develop new habits, new thought forms that could lead us to other things. And I just remember, like when I was younger, before I started dipping into the psychedelics, I would like be friends with these older people. And I just thought they were so intellectual. I mean, and it was all because they were doing psychedelics. And I just didn't understand, like, how can these people do LSD? And I thought it was such a bad thing. But I'm like, how can they be so like open-minded and so intellectual and, really cerebral? And now I understand it. It literally like sets you up for that. So I think like with anything, if we feel like we're stuck, we need to shut the default mode network down by like just maybe popping a mushroom here and there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I want to get back into that because some people don't understand that this is a medicine, and it has to
Right.
be, you can't casually create a journey for yourself. And also when you do, and you don't not sure what's happening, the reintegration part of having a facilitator, a therapist, somebody that really helps to give you some perspective. I'll get into some of those journeys, even my own personal
Yeah,
things that I
absolutely.
talk
Let's
about.
talk
But
about it.
let's talk about your own origin story, your personal journey. So
Yeah.
where did you grow up?
So I actually grew up in Newark, Delaware. So it's a very small state. My parents came here in the 70s. They went to college from Iran. So then they ended up staying here. And I grew up in Delaware, and then I moved to Philadelphia for college. I stayed there for 11 years. And then I moved to LA, and now I'm between LA and Puerto Rico. So I'm all over the place, but I do love to travel and experience new things. But what I always like, was fascinated about what were like psychedelics. So I ended up becoming a therapist, getting my second master's. And right before I finished or started my internship, uh, I was introduced to this documentary called titled Dosed, which is like going viral right now, but it's been out for a while. And it was about a woman who was struggling with heroin addiction, and she was able to find solace and peace and completely recover from it with Ibogaine. So I had this like in the back of my mind, and I, then started my internship working in addiction treatment. Now, I will have to say, I've never been around an addict of a chemical dependence. And I've never had anyone in my family that I was exposed to. So it was completely new territory for me to understand the psyche of someone who was dependent on something. And what I came to understand is obviously at the root of every illness is PTSD and trauma. So through that trauma, they found a coping mechanism that was able to numb them, and then eventually led them to their neurochemistry completely being altered, and now they're dependent on it as a primary need. So when I started to work in that treatment setting, I realized that a lot of the people that came in were repeated clients. I mean, it wasn't their first rodeo. They would, graduate, go through this rigorous program, and then come back and relapse, and then start again with this hopelessness and this like, despair and shame that they carried with them. And so I graduated, and then I had to work in California to earn my hours for licensure. And I worked in another treatment center, and I experienced the same thing, a revolving door of clients coming in, staying for like 6 months sometimes, and then going home, having this perfect job set up for them, having all the opportunities available, and then relapsing, coming back. And towards the end of my internship experience, fentanyl started to get really big. And so, people are not getting this opportunity to come back, once they relapse, they're dying. They're literally like falling, to the floor and just dying. And I realized like this was not it. And that documentary that I mentioned earlier came back to me, and I realized that I needed to touch base on Ibogaine again and read about it again. So I started to get certified in psilocybin assisted therapy. And then after that was done, I took all the integration and the preparation knowledge from that and went and did my own Ibogaine journey. And I will say that it's very important for anyone who wants to do a journey to have an integration coach or a therapist that understands what it's like. I didn't have that, so I had myself and all the knowledge that I could carry, and I read a lot, and so it changed my neurochemistry to the point where I wasn't as anxious anymore. I was able to get to the root of my traumas and why I had certain behaviors that I was repeating. I mean, I was diagnosed with body dysmorphic disorder, so it's a form of OCD. So that has been completely dissipated. I have moments here and there, but I know how to handle them. And then I, just got to understand why I operate and why I allow certain people to be in my life. I got the root of that through the journey. And so since then, I've just been an advocate. This is a very long story short, but I've been an advocate for this plant medicine. After having I've tried every single other like psychedelic you can name.
Mm-hmm.
And this one has been the one that has been the most profound for my mental health. And that's actually changed and impacted my neurochemistry to the point where I've been able to carry on habits and instill habits in my life that have been this long lasting since my journey the last journey I had was in February, and then the one before that was at this time last year. So that's where I'm at, and that's my origin story. It all came from me being the therapist, wanting to find a solution for a problem I saw repetitively in treatment centers that exist right now.
Yeah, it's always great to connect to your own journey and have that sense of empathy for others because you went through it yourself. I want to go back to childhood a little bit because I want to understand because I have immigrant parents as well. And when my parents ended up kicking me out and calling the cops for me for consuming cannabis. So I wonder what psychedelics in a Persian household were like. But what do you have? Were your parents together? Did you have siblings? Or by the way, just to preface, I'm from Philly. I live in LA for the last 16 years, but I know Delaware really well. And I know Philly exactly.
I lived in South Philly on Wolf Street for 11 years.
Yeah.
So I know.
I went to Temple. I grew up in Philly.
Me too. We're
Temple
alumni. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm probably like a few years older. So I graduated high school in 1990. So I'm
okay. I was born in 1990. So.
Exactly. So yeah, a few years apart.
Significant similarities with the dates and the origins of where we lived, but
exactly.
But so going to my childhood, bless their souls, and this isn't to badmouth anyone in my life, but my father is a narcissist, so like textbook narcissist, and my mother a dependent personality disorder, and I grew up with a sister who was basically diagnosed with schizoaffective bipolar disorder. So I had a chaotic household. I had a household that didn't feel stable. I had my parents who were 12 years apart and continuously argued a lot. And so I found myself really isolating from a very young age, not having my emotional needs met, or in general, just not being met with any type of nurturing. I was basically, I was an extension of my father. So whatever he needed himself to feel represented by is what I needed to be. And so my identity was kind of split from a very young age. I had to people please. I had to alter the way I presented myself. I had to alter the things that I liked and the things that I presented that I liked. I wasn't really able to verbalize my emotions and my feelings, so I kept them in. And that was just how I needed to operate. But anytime I left the house and I was with my friends, that's where I could be free. And I felt really, really like comforted and accepted. And so finding my sense of autonomy took a very long time. It didn't take until like I had to move out at 19 years old, and live on my own for years before I could separate myself from the shadows of what my parents wanted for me. And now I'm able to actually make decisions for myself. But like, I was stripped away from following that inner compass and my intuition, because the message that you get as someone who is a child in that type of household is you and your decisions and who you are as a person are not good enough. So you can't trust that. And you have to go with what we want for you. And when you're a child, you don't really know any better. So it takes a time. And it took me a while. And so that's why I went through years of college, years of changing majors, and years of like career change just to be able to come back to home.
Yeah.
And realize that like everything is fine with me. I don't need the external validation anymore. But it took a while, because if you think about it, you neglect yourself for a very long time. And so there's the self-love that doesn't exist. And it's all about what others need from you and how you can fulfill that.
How does that impact like that relationship with yourself? And I'm asking because so many parallels. I mean, I can talk to you about like my journeys besides being fulfilling all that stuff and an immigrant, but there's a lot of similarities. I had an interesting relationship with my father. Went through a lot of abuse and all that stuff. Right now, it's great. We talk every day, but the audience heard my story probably several times. But I was wondering, how does that lack of giving yourself love, how does that impact other relationships in your life? Friends, relationships with others. How does that manifest itself?
Well, I think every single romantic relationship that I've been through up until now, where I'm completely free and single, have been abusive. I've gotten gaslit and manipulated, and just I gave a lot more than I received. And it's because I constantly needed to prove myself, to prove my worth, and to prove that I was okay in the form that I existed. Whereas now, I'm just accepting that, this is what it is, and I don't need to do that. I recognize the pattern and I have the awareness. So I think it came with a lot of like pain from romantic relationships for me to be able to wake up and say, well, you need to change because you're the common denominator here. Yeah. I don't hold myself as a victim. What I can do is say, this is who I am, and this is all I have control over. If I keep getting these people that show up in my life in a similar fashion, and that means that's a lesson that I'm not learning yet. So I need to dig within, give myself some space, and really do the inner work to understand why I'm attracting these type of people. So it definitely has affected my romantic relationships. And I would say early on as a teenager, it affected my friendships in general, where I was giving a lot more. Again, like I was bending over backwards, sacrificing my own needs to make sure that, I was accepted, and that, those people had everything from me fulfilled. And it wasn't even a thing. I didn't even realize that I wasn't getting anything in return. Like just them accepting me was enough. And that's not enough. Like it has to be reciprocal. There has to be a give and take. And so I realized when I had this one moment in college where I almost thought that I was going to get expelled. And I was super depressed because, coming from like an immigrant background, like the last thing you want is for something like that to happen. And so I remember shutting down and realizing like, I don't really have anyone that I can go to, despite the fact I was always popular. Like I was homecoming princess. I mean, I always had a lot of friends everywhere that I went, but at the end of the day, when it came down to who can I go to, I didn't have that. And I if anything, didn't feel safe to go out and do that. So that could have been partially me and partially the people that were in my life. But yeah, that's when I realized like something needs to change within me. I need to do more work on myself. And I did. I actually like shut myself out, like completed school, did like 2 years of college in 1 year. That's how much I took, like 7 courses in one semester. Really buckled down and focused on school and myself. And to this day, I mean, any therapist that you talk to that I feel like is a growth-minded therapist will say we are always working on ourselves. There is not a time where we're not looking at us and our relationships with the outside world and ourselves, to help ourselves and to help others and be the best professional we could be.
I think sometimes when you're deep in it and you don't realize that there is abuse, you're not familiar with it because there's a pattern so familiar, coming from an abusive household, going into a relationship where it was abusive. Like I've been divorced for like 11 years or 12 years, something like that. But to, going through a relationship where I went through, into this with that mindset that I read books or anything, but I didn't really work on myself enough at that time to know the difference going from one abusive relationship into another abusive relationship, and then having it mirrored back to me that, no, you're the one that's being abusive. I'm like, I don't understand what that means. It was a really interesting, speaking of a narcissistic relationship, it was really interesting because it came back, like mirror back to me. No, you're being abusive. And then I was like, well, maybe I am being abusive. I don't know. Let me check within myself, kind of thing. So it's an interesting journey to actually try to figure out within yourself. And, I went into coaching too for a while because that was my therapy. Like going through a divorce, I started a divorce recovery group. It was called Rebuilding Your Life After Divorce. That was my therapy. Like listening to people's stories, that was helpful. And plus, I saw a therapist also. But
It's so helpful.
I want to ask you a question about that because I want to bridge this gap between psychedelics and therapy. Are there limitations to traditional therapy and the therapies that are available to us if I'm going to a psychotherapist, besides psychedelics, etc.? Are there certain limitations that you went through yourself in your journey and what you've experienced and what you studied and then said, you know what? We've done what we can with traditional therapy. Maybe there's something else there. Or how did you discover that?
So I think traditional therapy and psychedelics go hand in hand. With traditional therapy, you can go to therapy for years and yes, you'll get somewhere, right? But then with psychedelics, there's a catalyst. And I think it solely has to do with the neuroplasticity portion of it, because now we're able to form new neural networks. So yes, we're given this awareness and now we can implement that change with the psychedelics. Whereas with psychotherapy, you're limited because you're going to get that awareness, but then something is still not going to change. You're still stuck in these feedback loops. You're still stuck in these like patterns and habits that may take a really long time. I mean, sometimes you really like have to give yourself like this challenge in order for those patterns to break. Whereas with psychedelics, you get the awareness, you do the therapy, and then you're like, all right, I'm going to take the action and I'm going to change this. So I think that's where therapy is going. I think that's where it needs to go. And I think that's why it's resurfacing and people are talking about it again, because it is really proven to change people and provide them the treatment that they need at a much quicker time than traditional therapy will, right? I mean, we have EMDR for trauma, which is really great, but like as a therapist, have done it all. I've had multiple therapists and I've studied this. And so having this background and I'm me realizing that despite my awareness, I'm still stuck in these patterns, despite the fact that I'm coaching others, despite the fact that I'm giving therapy to other people. Why am I stuck in these patterns? And it all goes down to your neurochemistry. Something needs to change up here for you to be able to implement change. Otherwise, it's a lot harder and it's a lot more time consuming. So I think that's what the limitation is like not having the psychedelics help amplify the change for you.
But a psychopharmacologist can come in and say, you know what, Zara, I'm good with I can prescribe you an antidepressant medication or I can prescribe you anti-anxiety medication. What's the difference? It's the same thing. And plus, it's went through rigorous FDA trials and testing. And this is something that, can work. Why not just use the traditional therapies that exist?
Well, so, okay, I studied psilocybin and psilocybin is really known for major depressive disorder and like it helps with that. So with an antidepressant, what you do is you allow the person a time period to basically have a shield against their emotional circuits of the brain, because they're really sensitive at that point. So what you're doing is you're shielding that part. You can think about it as like putting a cast on a broken arm. The cast is just shielding your arm so it could heal on its own. But what happens with SSRIs or antidepressants is it also like numbs the good feelings that come in. So you're blunted. Whereas with psychedelics such as psilocybin, what they've proven is not only does it help like facilitate change in the emotional circuits of the brain, but it doesn't affect it. And it gives you new perspectives and insights. So people who've gotten on psilocybin assisted therapy have been able to heal from their depression at a much faster rate than someone who's been on an SSRI, because that SSRI is only protecting their brain and not actually giving them new perspectives to look at their problems from, to help them change why they're depressed about that issue. So like, again, the neuroplasticity and the ability for the plant medicine to not block the feel good and the feel bad emotions from coming in is what makes it different from psychopharmacology and the effects of what, that does for us.
Yeah,
And
a
there's a
100%.
ton of studies on that alone. So I can give you that. And then I can also, to talk about Ibogaine, what they do now in psychopharmacology for someone who has like an opioid addiction, they'll give them like methadone and or Suboxone. And so they're now dependent on this medication for a long period of time. And it's actually really, really hard for them to be weaned off. Whereas they go and they do a plant medicine journey with Ibogaine, and after a week, they're completely like off all their medications, off all the drugs that they've been addicted to, and now they're able to just navigate through life with their brains and nothing else. And this is like proven. So I think with psychopharmacology, I'm not a neuroscientist, but through research I've witnessed and through my own experience is like, we don't need to be dependent on something. And this is where big pharma comes in. They want us to be dependent on this medication because then we continue to consume them. And as Americans, we consume most of the world's psychotropic medications. And I think that's so messed up. But it says something. If the rest of the world can operate without that much, then so can we. And this is where we need to wake up.
Yeah, and you described it so well. So when I was 14, something like that, I was diagnosed with ADD or ADHD, and I was put on prescription medication. And I was the same exact feeling. I can't say it didn't quote unquote work, depending on how you define work, but it removed me from a sense of self. Like those feelings, you just go through the motions, but you don't have any feelings.
You don't have personality. Your personality is robbed of you. I've witnessed this through and through. And I was diagnosed with ADHD too, and it shows up differently in women. But there are books on this that teach you how to change your lifestyle so that you can accommodate. And what we're doing with students by giving them, or children, giving them ADHD medication is we're saying to them, we're going to take away your soul so that you can confine and follow what works for everyone else.
Well, they also say it's a disorder. It's you're now have this, the scarlet letter on your chest that, oh my God, you just created, I something wrong with me. So that I have to fix it. It doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong with it.
Recognizing it as being neurodivergent, being more creative, more entrepreneurial. It's actually proven. I read a whole book about this. It's called ADHD for Badass Women. It's a really good book. And it talks about how we're more prone to being creatives and entrepreneurial because we don't follow the conventional path. And we are not meant to be in boxes. We are humans. We are not meant to be stored away and compartmentalized in boxes and told that this is how we need to think and operate. We are meant to evolve and show our uniqueness and our sense of autonomy and ourselves in whatever capacity we're meant to, and accommodate and adjust and adapt, not confine and restrict through the medications.
What is Ibogaine? What is it?
So Ibogaine comes from this root bark called Tabernath iboga. It's an alkaloid extracted from that root bark. So that root bark is located and it originated in Gabon, Africa. It's part of a very a sacred plant medicine ceremonial tribe. You know, it comes from a very, very rich history. And what it does, the Ibogaine, is that it's an alkaloid, and alkaloids are basically plants or compounds in plants that are effective on your body, that can give you profound insights. I mean, or like change your body and make you feel something. And so what it does, it basically, what it's popular for is for the psycho-spiritual journeys that it takes people on in Gabon, Africa, in the ceremonial setting. I mean, they give it to babies. But what it got popular for in the West is for its anti-addictive properties. It was discovered by accident by a man named Howard Lautzoff, who was addicted to heroin and just decided to do this. He just decided to try this out and realized his cravings went away. So then he started giving it to all his friends, and then all their cravings went away. And they basically found the solution through this medicine for addiction with opioids. So it like literally just came upon him. And ever since then, it's been a hallmark for people who've been suffering from addiction treatment or from addiction in general. And not just to chemical, but also like porn addictions and gambling addictions that trigger the same neuroreceptor sites in the brain. Basically, it helps combat all of that, as well as take people on spiritual quests to find the root cause of, you know, their suffering. So it's a plant medicine that has its own consciousness. And I say this because as a marriage and family therapist, it basically was my marriage and family therapist. Each person that goes on a journey is guided through this visual quest that reminds them and shows them their family members and their ancestors. It's different from other psychedelics where we tell other people who try ayahuasca or psilocybin to go on this journey that they're going on with no expectations, but to set an intention. But with this, the person who administered it to me, he said, you're going to see your family members. So it's a given that you're going to be rooted back to where you're from and where you came from an ancestral level. And I think for me, that is why I know it has its own consciousness, because it literally leads people through the same direction that they need to go. Whereas other psychedelics can be a lot more arbitrary in their approach.
I think there's a lot of people who reach out to me and want to try, you know, psychedelics, but they're afraid, they're fearful of the other descriptions of people's journeys. You know, even myself, like the first time I tried DMT, 5-MeO DMT, which is the active ingredient in ayahuasca, and you can correct me if I'm wrong about any of this stuff, but it was an extremely intense experience. And you know, the facilitator I was with the first time I did that, I explained what was going on. I couldn't even understand, but it felt like I was dying. Like, and he's like, hey, you know, it's an ego death or whatever, you know, perhaps. But the one thing I remember, there was part of it. I was falling somewhere. There was a ladder. I was trying to hold on to stuff, and he's like, well, why are you holding on? And that was just so profound. It's like, let go. That's what it's trying to tell you, is to let go and stop controlling and stop trying to grab on. And then, you know, the second time I had a really profound, beautiful journey. But what do you say to people that have this fear, like, because it could be an intense experience?
Yeah. So fear, our brains are wired to protect us, right? So fear is not a bad thing. We are wired to look for risks and to mitigate those risks. Now, when people have been through a lot of trauma, they become a little bit more controlling in the sense where they need to plan more. They are a little bit more rigid because they want to prevent themselves, and they're hyper vigilant of like the bad that could come to them, because they automatically start to think that, you know, the worst case scenario. When it comes to fear, I would say you have to be compassionate with yourself and understand that this is just your brain trying to protect you. But you need to also push past, because then you'll never know what's on the other side of it. Like you said, you had a profound journey, but if you would have stayed in fear, you would have never been able to experience that and experience that message that told you to let go. So that's actually a message that a lot of people get when they have psychedelic journeys, including myself. And it's really because, we try our best to control, but what we're doing is we're holding ourselves back from really living life and seeing how life unfolds for us so beautifully in a way where everything is orchestrated in divine timing and a manner that is supposed to be perfect. So if we continue to try to go against that grain, we're just giving ourselves more of a headache and allowing ourselves and like not allowing life to unfold the way it's supposed to. It really just makes things harder for yourself.
Yeah.
And Taoism is really good for this. They say be like water. So, be adaptable, be flexible, be strong, allow yourself to flow, allow yourself to freeze if you need to. But ultimately be able to allow yourself to just go with it. And and with fear, I think what you're doing is you're really like robbing yourself of joy. You're robbing yourself of what there is that could be. And also, I think you have to go within and really like dig deeper to understand what faith means. What is faith? What is trusting the divine? What is, trusting the universe? What does that mean? We are these beings. And if we, even on a plane, we're not visible. So you think about the universe and how vast that is. And here we are, as little as we are, trying to control something so big outside of us. It's just, it's impossible.
No, I think you made a great point
It's
about people.
easier. It's just easier to let go and let life be. And I promise with time, you start to live with more ease, if anything, and you eliminate anxiety.
I mean, it's definitely that's the right thing to do and to say, but
Yeah.
people with trauma that
Right.
and generational trauma, it's that whole thing of, well, if I control, maybe I will not experience, some of the pain that I experienced before. So you're trying to kind of protect yourself. And you're absolutely right. I mean, with psychedelics, that's the call. It's telling you. And there's a great book by Michael Singer, The Surrender Experiment. And I'm like, that is the scariest book I read. I'm like, what do you mean? You just like untether yourself from everything and you just let the universe. For somebody like me who like ADD, I need to have systems. I need to have I need to have routines and all that stuff. It was a really scary thing, but I think psychedelics definitely helped me
They
to be
help a
able to
lot.
kind of create that new neuroplasticity, as you mentioned, new neural networks. And even starting, like, I know I work with a lot of people who administer ketamine, for instance, and I see that there is like some potential for new memories, as you said, because there's the chandelier cells, they open up, they have allow neurons to travel at the synapse and create new thoughts. Instead of people with PTSD, they kind of repeat the cycle over and over. But
Right.
I've seen this happen over and over and over, and I'm just saying that there's so much value to what you do, because if they don't get like therapy or a facilitator or somebody that can help reintegrate them after a while, I see them going back and
Right.
repeating the same pattern. So you definitely need to be able to reintegrate. Maybe you can also talk about like the legalities of Ibogaine and what can you do, what's legal and what can't you do, and where can you do this so you're
Yeah.
compliant and
Of
legal.
course. So before I even get into that, I want to mention when people are really traumatized, they intellectualize a lot. And one of the main things to do when you have experienced complex PTSD or PTSD is to get into your body and to trust the feelings in your body. And you can do that incrementally. So through yoga, you can do somatic experiencing, but breath work. Allow yourself to be connected to your body again and let your enteric nervous system, your gut, guide you. That's how you get back to your inner compass. That inner compass is there to help ease your life and help you move through life so that you're not living in fear. You're not so confused about what to do. It helps with discernment and judgment. And when you're noticing that you're so up here, what you're doing is you're, like I said, robbing yourself away from, or justifying things for yourself and robbing yourself away from the joy of like what it means to just be. And then going back to your Ibogaine question. So yes, it's illegal in the US. It's legal in Mexico, legal in Gabon, Africa, obviously, Portugal, New Zealand, and maybe like a few other countries that I may not maybe know about at the time. But overall, it's a benefit that we in Mexico, it's legal at least, because it's close to the US. And the one thing I can say though, out of, not just the legality part, the main thing that you want to focus on with any treatment center that you want to go to is the safety. So safety in an unregulated market is really, really important. So, make sure that whoever you go through, whatever clinic you go to, you do your research, and you identify whether they do liver panel tests, drug tests, heart EKGs, because all of this is really important in your journey. And you want to have a connection with your facilitator. So someone that actually sits with you and you feel comfortable with and explains the process to you through and through. And then also offers you integration work after your treatment. So if not through them, then through someone that they know and trust to help you unfold whatever you receive. All of that goes into this container of safety. And over any legality or parts of that is your psychological well-being, because if you are not aware and if you don't take precautionary action, you can actually re-traumatize yourself with people who are serving you for the monetary reasons, unfortunately.
Yeah. You mentioned, I think on your website, if I remember correctly, the 6 pillars of wellness.
Yeah.
So it was mental, emotional, spiritual,
Financial.
there was one more, relational. That was it.
Yeah.
So is there like a how do I say this? Is there like sort of a meter where if you're working with somebody, is it possible? Because I'll ask this question this way. Tony Robbins always talks about, well, you can have a really good relationship with your relationship with your spouse or whatever it is, but maybe your financial world is not really well. It's really difficult to have everything, and that's the goal. Everything be great, but maybe sometimes you're in the winter of your relationship where you're planting, and spring is coming. You have to plant seeds for that, and then you're getting the whatever you planted in the summertime. So, is there a way when you're working with somebody, when you go through all those different pillars, is there a way to be able to get all those pillars in sync so they're all at the optimal level they can be?
Yeah, so what I like to do is with any domain in life, I actually ask my clients to imagine those domains as buckets. And throughout their life and throughout their day-to-day, they would put like a point or like words in their bucket on how much time they're contributing to those different domains. And then what they get to realize and what they get to see and have more awareness of is where they're concentrating more of their energy towards and where the imbalance exists. And just through that awareness, they're able to make the shifts to like maybe focus on their relational dynamics and with their friendships or their personal relationships with their romantic partner or their financial domain. All of it is just like a visual, it's awareness. And it just takes time for you to be able to differentiate and see and plan out what it is that you're giving more of your time to. I think that is how you stay balanced in general, in life. So for some people, they might put like a lot of their energy into their spirituality. And so then at that point you have to question, well, why? Why is that so important for you? Maybe that also relates to your finances because it's your line of work, or maybe that also relates to your dynamics with your family members who are also practicing the same spiritual, and maybe that's the way you connect with them. So For every person, it's custom and it's different, but the short answer here is to just take them as in like little buckets and just start to put little words and little time, a little bit of time into understanding where you place and what you do most and what bucket is more filled and not. And that's how you get the balance.
When you did your psychedelic journeys, and I've done almost everything the same as you. I've not done Ibogaine yet, and I have not done ayahuasca.
Grandfather, it's like the best one you can do. You got to do it.
All right, well,
And hopefully
we'll
I'll
do
be
it.
there.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it. I'm definitely open to it. But does it? When you start doing psychedelics, I'll just talk about me, and you can chime in and say if you had a similar experience.
Mhm.
The changes that you get are so profound that sometimes the world around you and the people around you seem different. So is it difficult to then maintain certain relationships with people that may not be serving you any longer after you start realizing that you went on this journey? Is it okay to kind of let them go because they're not connected or not willing to make the changes in their own lives to be able to connect with you anymore?
I think it all comes down to boundaries and self-expression. So, if you're expressing what you've experienced and you've been to maybe integration groups or you've sat with your friends and your family and you've talked about your journey to them, and then you begin to identify your needs and the boundaries that you need to hold and communicate that. If they are respected and reciprocated, then those relationships serve you. And if they don't, then that is your sign to shift. And it's totally okay to do that. A lot of people actually become fearful of leaving friendships, childhood friendships they've had that are no longer serving them because they're thinking about the history and then the emotional aspect. But at what point will that interfere with your well-being and your life? If someone's not respecting your boundaries and they're constantly, triggering you, then your inner peace is more important at that point. And if you're verbalizing that and there's nothing being changed, then at that point it's your fault for staying
Yeah.
stuck, right? So then it's like, what did this journey really do for you? I think with journeys, the integration part is highly it's correlated with your relationships. Your relationships will shift. They'll either get closer or they'll start to dissipate and shift apart. But there's nothing wrong with letting go, right? Like going back to that final message, it's okay to let go. And when you do that, you essentially just open your cup for more people to come into your life that are more aligned to where you are on a conscious level. And that's actually more profound and deep than, and once you experience that, you won't go backwards. You'll trust, right? You'll trust the universe again, and then you'll let go even more. And so
100%.
like
Yeah.
I travel all over the world, and I actually came to Puerto Rico and started living here last year. And now I have a whole group of friends that I'm connected to. And it's because I know that once I'm in alignment and, with myself, I know that it'll be easy for me to find people who are just as aligned. So yeah, let
Yeah.
go and
I mean,
let
so
life be.
yeah. So brilliantly said. I really want people to resonate with this because even in my own experience and people I know, this fear, my daughter was such a great example. When she was like in seventh grade, there was a group of kids that were doing things that she didn't really connect to. And she made a decision as difficult in seventh grade, it's a difficult decision to make. She's like, you know what? I'm just gonna remove myself from that group. And she made a couple other friends that weren't that cool. So she was even more of an outcast for that 1 year. And then she attracted next year all these other people in her life. And some of the people that are not, that's their peak in seventh and eighth grade. That was it. They kind of went away. But it opens you up to so many different things. And as people stay in relationships, people stay in friendships for the reason that they're fearful of letting go. Oh, as you said, there's history, there was this and there was that.
Emotions,
But
yeah.
when you're opening up space for these new opportunities, new people, new experiences to come in your life. So yeah,
I
definitely
actually want to
concur.
congratulate you for being such a good parent, because I think that there's something that she gained and then something that you gave to her to make her feel so strong within her soul, even at the stage that she's in as a teenager, where they don't have a lot of self-awareness yet, right? They're so young. But for her to be able to say, I don't care, I'm going to shift my focus onto others, because she essentially had enough love and respect for who she was through you and your partners, to be able to identify with herself and be able to make that shift so smoothly at that age. I think that's says a lot about you as a parent too. So
Thank
kudos
you.
to you.
I
Mhm.
appreciate it. All right, so I have a few music related questions for you.
Okay.
Let's see.
Okay.
If we can- Do you remember the very first concert that you ever attended?
Yes, I went. My very first concert was in Camden, like right over the bridge, and it was the Lil Wayne and Drake concert in 2008.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's by
Yeah.
where the aquarium is, right? On the
Yes, I think it was something. It started with an S, like the Susquehanna Center. I don't know,
yeah, makes
but
sense.
yeah, it was so fun. It was actually like on a hill outdoors, and it was my first. I grew up with really strict parents. It was my first time at 18 being able to like go to a concert with music that they probably wouldn't approve of, and just like
Right.
dance in the sky and the stars. It was really, really fun. So that was my first concert.
What was the last concert you went to?
The last one I just went to was, oh, okay, so Coachella. So that
Okay.
was a ton of concerts in
Yeah.
one.
And you're getting your fill all one shot.
But yeah, you know who I really like? I really like John Summit. I like his and Hala. A lot of like, I would say trance, music. Yeah, and psychedelics can also be used for escapism. And so, when I went to Coachella, that's what I used it for. And I vibe with the music very well that
Yeah,
way.
yeah. No, I have a feeling that's why EDM is like on the rise right now
Oh my
because
God,
people are doing a
yeah.
lot of
It's
microdosing.
yeah, I mean the energy, it's just different. Like everyone just loves each other. You just
Yeah.
feel love, and then there's the good music, and then you're dancing and you're in your body. It's just, I don't know how to, it's so euphoric.
You know,
So
it's so funny to me that things are like I'm a little bit more seasoned than you in age. But when I was a kid, I fake ID since I was like 15, 16 years old. And I didn't go like to frat parties and all that stuff. I got fake ID. I started going to clubs. So in Philly, I would go to clubs like there was after hour clubs, like the Revival and Black Banana. But then we started going to New York. And then
uh-huh.
the rave culture started hitting, and it was ecstasy, MDMA, and it was the
Right.
same. It was such a beautiful, euphoric experience with so much love. Prior to Giuliani kind of changing New York, but it was an incredible time to grow up. So
Yeah. I've enjoyed those clubs too in Philly. I think that's where I got my first clubbing experience, was when I moved to Philly, and then yeah, you shift to New York, obviously.
exactly,
Really good club scenes.
yeah.
So yeah.
All right, another music related question. You sort of started kind of listing them already. So for next year, you can only listen to 5 albums. So you don't have to remember the name of the album. It can be whatever the artist, but what would be those 5 albums?
Oh man. Okay. Can I look at my phone for this?
Sure. You're cheating using
Oh
Spotify.
man. Oh my God. Yeah. So, like I said, I really like Kayla, and I think her album is called hmm, Dusk.
Okay.
So she's yeah, so that's Dusk. I really like John Summit. So let's see what his album is called. You're pulling me into music more.
It doesn't matter what the name of the album is unless you know it's just John Summit album. Uh,
Yeah, so
all right.
it's called Comfort in Chaos.
Okay. I like
Love
that.
that. Okay, let's see what else. Um, hmm, this is hard.
Yeah, but like this is where the letting go of control comes in, because there's the things I look at it as a moment in time. Because if you would ask me that question, maybe two, maybe three are kind of constant, but the other
Uh-huh.
two, they change. It's just a moment in time. Like this is what came to mind right
Fred
now.
again. I like Fred again. I went to his concert. So I don't know the name of his album, but Fred again is pretty good. I like Adam Port. Let's see. And there's another, oh, Thames. I like her a lot too. And I don't know the name of her album,
It's cool.
but yeah, Thames, Tems. She's like really empowering. Um, and yeah, I think I would say
Okay.
that would be it for now.
That's
Yeah.
that's your
Yeah.
5. All right. So what have psychedelics meant in your life?
Psychedelics pulled me out of just being stuck in my own head. It pulled me into like making life choices that were really difficult. It pulled me into having a more, united feeling with myself and giving myself love. And it pulled me into having better friendships and closer friendships with people. It pulled me into wanting to explore entrepreneurship and what that means for me. It pulled me into wanting to expand my mind in ways that I actually would have never thought. Um, so yeah, I think all of that is just as a therapist, it feels like it's enough. We're
Yeah.
so in our heads as ourselves, but for me to feel this expansive is something I'll never want to go back on.
Yeah.
So
Makes sense.
yeah,
All right, so final bonus question. Please
okay.
describe what your room looked like growing up.
Okay, so my room, I had a twin bed. No, I had a full-size bed and my walls were purple and I had purple and gold. And then I had a closet that faced my bedroom and I had two windows on one side of my bed and another window on the other side. And then I had a dresser. I had a lot of focus on like flowers, florals, candles. Let's see, some stuffed animals, but mainly like clothes and shoes and purses, where my closet was just filled with accessories and clothing, and I wouldn't say I ever had any like poster of a celebrity or anything like that. No, I never had any of those, but I just remember the emphasis and the value of my room was in my closet.
Got it. No, so nothing on the wall, no artwork and no.
I had like, I think I had pictures of like myself when I was younger that my mom took, like in a professional, like one of those J.C. Penney Macy's pictures. But like, no, I didn't have any, like anybody that I idolized that I hung up in my
Got it.
room.
Got it.
No.
Zara, where can people find out more about you? Where can they engage with you in your
Yeah.
sessions, Ibogaine, etc.?
So I'm on my website, www.zahraadloo.com. I'm also on Instagram at zshirazi, which is ZeeShirazi. And I'm also on TikTok as a psychedelic psychotherapist. So those are the 3 channels that I'm focused on right now. And hopefully in the future, there's podcasts out there with me all over, but you can mainly find me on Instagram and through my website.
And for my fans, now that you listened and stayed with this whole episode, really appreciate it. And I hope you found it fascinating. And please leave your reviews, subscribe. I'm the worst at doing this stuff, by the way. But they told me like you have to ask people for more reviews. I'm like, all right, so please
Yeah.
send them, even if they're not good. I don't care. I'll read them and
All
improve.
feedback
But
is good feedback.
yeah,
Yeah.
and thank you for buying the book and all that other stuff. So I really appreciate everybody's Making Cannabis Personal is the name of the book, if anybody forgot. But Zara, I really want to thank you so much for being on. It's truly enlightening and inspirational. And I want to emphasize this thing because I've been to, I want to say 10 therapists, probably more, but like, well, there is a sense of empathy. Like if somebody doesn't walk in your shoes and can't relate and empathize with your journey, I really feel that the therapy is not going to be as successful as somebody that can do that. But by you actually going through your own journey and your own journey with psychedelics, I didn't talk about this. I'm not sure if my friend wants me. I'm not going to mention names, but I have a friend of mine who is the medic for SEAL Team 6.
Oh,
They
wow.
came. They came. So when the troops were left in Afghanistan, they actually pulled them out,
Okay.
and there was a private mission to pull out a lot of them.
Yeah.
13 of them committed suicide during COVID,
Oh,
and
wow.
I
Yeah.
started.
There's a statistic on that too. 22%, I mean, 4.5% of adults in America commit suicide, and 22% have PTSD out of the whole US. So that's a high percentage. Most
Yeah.
of them are from, being in war.
Yeah,
So
veterans. Yeah,
veterans,
it's definitely. But I
yeah.
just wanted to reemphasize what you were saying. So we found a channel to get psychedelics to them. It was psilocybin mushrooms. But until they did a journey and they went to Mexico and there was a group of them for Ibogaine, that
Uh,
changed their lives completely. We
wow.
haven't
Yeah.
lost one since. So I just wanted to
Oh my God. That's
reemphasize what you just said.
a great point to put out. Yeah, health traumatic injury too. So all those blasts and all those things they experience. So yeah, for people who have been in combat and who have experience with war and have been a veteran, like 100% go towards Ibogaine, and you'll definitely find your inner peace,
Yeah.
especially after serving and having such a tough journey in life.
Well, thank you again. Appreciate you being
Thank
on.
you.
All
Thank
right.
you so much, Len. Have a good day.
Hey everyone, thank you for watching and listening. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, share this episode, and hit that bell. Like, comment. I so appreciate that. And check me out on social under Len May or Len May DNA. Find out more on LinkedIn or lenmaycoaching.com. And remember, everything is personal.